All right, so for today's deep dive, we're looking at a stack of documents, legal files, first-hand accounts, and they all center on one single address in Lima, Peru.
The Japanese ambassador's residence.
Exactly. And a very specific moment in time.
December 17th, 1996. You have to picture this. It's a massive party for the emperor's birthday. You've got 500 of Peru's absolute elite there, diplomats, Supreme Court justices.
And then a wall just explodes.
It does. 14 militants from the MRTA burst in, and suddenly you have a massive hostage crisis.
And this is where the popular history usually just, skips ahead 4 months to the heroic rescue.
Right. But the sources we have show the real story isn't just the raid. It's the 127 days in between. It's the psychological game and, more importantly, what it revealed about the state of Peru.
You really can't talk about this without talking about the man in charge, President Alberto Fujimori.
No, the context is everything. By 96, he'd already staged his auto-gulp, his self-coup. He basically dissolved Congress and grabbed total control.
And I saw this in the files, this concept of faceless courts. I mean, that sounds like something from a dystopian novel.
Oh, it was very real. Judges would literally wear hoods to hide their identities while they were convicting insurgents. It was a system built for one thing: convictions.
Yeah.
Not justice.
So that's the government the MRTA is trying to negotiate with.
Exactly. And you have to distinguish them from, say, the Shining Path.
Right, which was a completely different thing, almost a death cult.
Completely. The MRTA saw themselves as revolutionaries. They wanted to trade these high-profile hostages for their own members who were locked away in these, well, they called them prison tombs.
So they needed a spectacular event to get a seat at the table.
They did. But inside the residence, once the shock wore off, things got surreal.
I read they were playing chess and taking cooking lessons together, hostages and captors.
A completely bizarre domesticity. But that was all facade, because outside, the government was blasting military marches through massive loudspeakers.
They said it was psychological warfare to wear the rebels down.
That was the cover story. But really, it was acoustic camouflage.
To hide the sound of digging.
Miners, working around the clock, digging this sophisticated network of tunnels right under their feet. And they were getting intel from inside.
The guitar.
The guitar, yeah. Admiral Luis Giampietri, one of the hostages, had a tiny two-way radio hidden inside a guitar. He was feeding intelligence to the military the whole time.
Incredible. But this is where the deep dive for me gets much darker than secret tunnels.
This is where we see the government wasn't just fighting insurgents. It was fighting humanitarian norms. Specifically, this idea of medical neutrality.
The basic principle that a doctor treats anyone who is sick or injured, regardless of who they are.
Fujimori's government just threw that out the window. They began treating medical care for a subversive as an act of treason.
You see the case of Dr. Maria Teresa de la Cruz Flores. She did a skin graft on a wounded rebel.
A standard medical procedure. And for that, a faceless court sentenced her to 20 years in prison for terrorism.
20 years. And it wasn't just doctors. I mean, the sources mention Leonor La Rosa, an intelligence agent.
Tortured by her own people because they thought she was a leak. Even aid workers from Caritas, the Catholic charity, were getting kidnapped. The message was clear.
If you help the enemy in any way, you are the enemy.
It effectively weaponized the entire healthcare system. But back at the residence, time was running out. The tunnels were ready.
And that radio and the guitar gave them the last piece they needed. The rebels had a fatal routine.
Indoor soccer. Every afternoon, like clockwork, the leaders would put their guns down and play a game.
A fatal lapse in vigilance.
That was the signal. April 22, 1997, Operation Chavin de Huantar.
140 commandos, they detonated explosives, and the floor of the residence literally blew open from below.
The whole raid was over in 40 minutes, a total blitz. All 14 rebels were killed.
But only one hostage died in the crossfire and 2 soldiers. Tactically, it was a stunning success. Fujimori looked like a hero.
He did, for a while. But a shadow fell over the victory almost immediately. There were reports from credible witnesses that several rebels who tried to surrender were executed on the spot.
Extrajudicial killings.
Exactly. And those allegations, along with corruption charges, eventually caught up with him. He fled, was extradited, and was ultimately convicted for human rights abuses.
So it brings us to this really difficult final question. The raid itself saved 71 lives. It was an undeniable tactical success.
But when a government uses methods like that, jailing doctors, dismantling legal principles, executing prisoners to achieve that victory, what's the real cost?
Does the tactical win justify burying the democratic principles you're supposedly fighting to protect?
That's the question Peru is still grappling with.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.